Hello, my name is Carl Michael von Hausswolff. I'm an artist and a composer, and then sometimes an EVP researcher, and I'm living in Stockholm, Sweden.
I'm Emily Nam. We are art people.
It's just something that happened to be there, and it kind of sounds like that because I did this stretching a little, and it's my fantasy that it sounds like a human voice.
On today's episode, I'm in conversation with Carl Michael von Hausswolff, a sound composer, visual performance artist, and curator born in Sweden in 1956. Since the 1970s, Mickey, who he is personally known as, uses the audio recorder and recording technology as his main device to create sound compositions that explore electricity, frequency, and architectural space. Included in his investigations is the paranormal experience of electronic voice phenomena, which explores the presence of supernatural beings in other dimensions, intercepted as concurrent frequencies manifesting as voices and whispers from the other side. Hausswolff's music and installations have been presented throughout Europe, North America, and Asia in festivals and art platforms. This includes an evening's light installation in a graveyard in Stockholm, Red Night 2 in 2009, the Moderna Museet in Sweden, the Whitney Biennial in New York City, and the Venice Biennale. He has curated the sound art installation project Freak Out since 2003, and he has collaborated with Swedish artist Leif Elggren, filmmaker Thomas Nordenstad, EVP researcher Michael Esposito, and Jónsi from Sigur Rós, collaborating on the project Dark Morph. His work can be found on record labels including RasterNoton, Touch, Ideal, and MonoType. Mickey's sound compositions are complex layerings that are dense and radical, intuitively exploring a macromal and paced output of sound frequencies that interact with the unexpected spaces that interrogate our physical perceptions of sound, light, and space. I'm thrilled to be speaking with Mickey today. He has a compelling perspective of our global culture, and I am fascinated with how he integrates his sound investigations with the human experience. I hope you can enjoy this conversation. Thank you, Mickey, for joining me today. It's a pleasure to speak with you.
I'm happy to be here. Yeah.
So I just wanted to start off the conversation and clarify a bit about your work. I think the perception of how I interpret it and what you're actually intending to do can be quite different. So I would consider that you're investigating this physical nature of sound and the movement and interaction of electrical frequencies. Would that be something you relate to?
Yes. I mean, there are so many different angles on this, but a large part of it, yes, I agree. Yeah.
I was curious what kind of environments and people and community led
Yeah.
you
I mean,
to being interested in sound.
I was born in a town called Linköping, in which is well, it's a pretty old town, so they have a lot of medieval surroundings and an old dome church and all these kind of things, and it's also a university town. Um, and I also part of my life I lived in that city, and part of my life, let's say my teenage years, which are quite important for the development of what you do further on in your life. I grew up in the countryside, so I was going to school in the country, and I had a lot of various friends there, either from the village or kids that grew up on farms and so on. So it's that kind of rural environment. And then I moved back to town again, to Linköping, and I stayed there. And then, yeah.
And were your friends interested in sound? Was there a lot of experimental music happening at the time around
Yeah,
you?
well, in the beginning, when I was more like teenager and so on, it was not. I mean, of course there were music, but what my friends were listening to was the general pop music that was around in the 60s, and yeah, But when I moved back to my hometown again, Linköping, it did not have so much of visual arts and so on. There was not really any art museum, but there were very fabulous record shops, several of them, and they not only had rock and pop music, but also experimental music, new classical music, German free jazz, and progressive rock and so on, and all kinds of music. So I was my sound education comes from there, really. Basically, buying records. And
So what happened then for you to find yourself working with these subtle frequencies, and what was the step? Because you didn't
yeah,
train in
no,
music, did you?
no. I mean, later on, when I moved to to Gothenburg in 1978, I enlisted on the university, and I took courses in history of literature and musicology. So, but before that, in Linköping, there were more. I mean, since some of the music that we listened to was quite so experimental, it was more like tape cut-ups, and it was like electroacoustic music composed in the maybe 40s and 50s and so on, that actually came out on record. Also computer music, very really early computer music, John Cage and all these kind of things that the Americans put out on record and so on. And also in this part, I also learned that also experimental, a certain type of English musicians were educated in art college. Actually, a lot of them, because it was some kind of special thing for people that didn't want to really educate themselves in England. So a lot of the progressive rock musicians and bands had an art education, and even so, that was when people like composers like Brian Eno and these people emerged in the early 70s. And I guess he was one of those persons that also said that I'm not a musician. I'm not a, I just I I just do things with sound. I don't have to be educated as a musician. And I was kind of a little bit lazy person. I didn't really want to do too much efforts on like learning things. I would rather. I mean, I also thought that some people like that played music, musicians and so on, they did it so well. So I was asking myself, why should I do that? I mean, they can do it. I could do something else. And when the idea of just to make music without having this kind of training came up, it really excited me. It just meant that I could do things that without any formal training, and as long as I liked it myself. And uh, I wasn't really reading any music magazines at the time too, so I wasn't aware of like music criticism and so on. I didn't really give a damn about that, really. I was just like wanted to do things that was enjoyable. That also meant to find various ways to record things that I could use as instruments, to find really a new instrumentation. I mean, of course, I could record instruments and play around with them with a tape recorder, but I could also record things like my own heartbeats and things around and so on, and use that as my instruments, as my compositional instruments, and so I was interested in that. And so when I moved from my hometown when I was around 21 or something, to a larger town, I was interested in this. And I learned how to play guitar a little bit because everybody was playing in baroque bands anyway. So I can play in baroque bands too. So I did that just because I like this kind of music too. Then when I came to Göteborg, I just continued to see what was possible in the, not only in the sound world but also in the visual art world, that I started to develop certain types of theatrical works based on and influenced by French poet Antonin Artaud. And Artaud was propagating for a certain type of theater that I was interested in, that didn't really meant that you had to act. It also meant that everything you do in life is just an act. So let's try to do something else. Let's try to do something real on stage. And then I was informed that what you're doing is actually called performance art, and it's actually an art form, and so on and so on. So yeah, so this is now in the late 70s that I started to.
I think a lot about possibilities when I listen to your work, and that you're exploring a space that is not contained within the normal or just the expected way of observing and experiencing the world, not being defined by how you should do things.
Yeah.
It feels like you're documenting experiences. So you were talking about documenting sounds of the body and do a lot of field recording. So how important is for you to create an experience or document an experience?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I have several friends like Chris Watson and other friends that actually are very, very fantastic field recording. They have these fantastic skills from a professional point of view, and some of them do fabulous compositions out of this. I was never really interested. I have never really been interested into to work to release something that are already just a recording of something. I always wanted to see what I can do with it. And with the Travelogue series is very much like that. That me and also Chandra Shukla, the American that I work with, we always reform the sounds that we record in these various places. And and as I said initially, this is something that for me becomes an instrument. So I have very often recorded places and just sounds of various natural things, or maybe city urban things and so on. And then at some point, I was also when I was doing work with Jónsi from singer of Sigur Rós, this music band, we were recording underwater sounds in Fiji and Tonga out in the Pacific Ocean. And we captured humpback whales and shrimp sounds and all kinds. But we didn't we from the first record we did we didn't want to exploit the animal or bird kingdom or whatever you call it. We wanted to, in one way or another, show that we had made recordings from there, but changed it into a compositional format and composed compositions, and then try to give something back. So instead of just like exploiting nature, actually try to make people to realize that why don't we take care of our nature too? Why we don't just have to kind of destroy everything by exploiting it. Let's use it and then give something back so it can be preserved and well, saved, because now we live in a world which is quite, I mean, people are, including me, are quite nervous about the future and what it's going to look like. So I've always been changing my recordings into a certain kind of format, and also experimenting with my compositions, and allowing me to take a risk. Maybe people don't like it, and I can't really be concerned about that. I just need to maybe take a risk and see how it functions.
in terms of this idea of celebrating something and highlighting the importance of something, I don't feel that I'm listening to something. I feel I'm amongst it and I'm submerged within this environment of it. So when you are creating the sounds, I have to pay attention in a different way. I have to come down. It's not like a pop song and it's just thrown in my face. I have to pay attention to what I'm listening to, and it becomes this visceral experience. And I think a lot about this in your work, that you are sharing and giving a new experience to someone because you're bringing us into that moment. And so, for example, if you are doing recordings of the whales in Fiji, it's like I'm in the water with the whales. And I was thinking about this in one of your pieces addressing the fallen angels. I felt like I was in it and experiencing it, and it changed my senses and how I listen to things. Is that
Yeah.
important for you?
Yes, it is. It's important to me, maybe not when I compose it, but when I listen to the finished composition and before I deliver it to something that it might make a record out of it, right? Before I send it out to somebody else to listen to it. When I listen to it myself, it's quite important that I get immersed in this kind of world that has been created. Um, and sometimes I realize that it's a little bit of a sometimes it fades up really slowly. So you listen to it and then suddenly you kind of you get immersed in it because the fade up is so slow that you kind of suddenly just realize that you are like in within this and I like this. I like to have that um,
Well, it feels like you're
that
priming the listener. I
a
definitely
little
feel
bit.
that. You're priming us to receive whatever it is that you're eventually
Yeah,
offering us to be able to
yeah,
perceive. And that's where I come back to this idea of possibilities, different possibilities of living in the world, because we have our sense organs, we have our ways of doing things and experiencing the world, and you're giving us this very unique perception that you have.
yeah. And I also do this when I play live concerts. It's this kind of way of trying to put the. I mean, when I play live, I play with a mixing console and various sounds that I choose from the beginning, and then I choose while I'm playing. It's not just like pre
Mm-hmm.
pre composed, but then at the same time, I listen at the same time a lot, and I listen. I don't like to have monitors in front of me on stage. I want to be really more have to be behind the big PA system, so I hear the same thing that the audience are experiencing. So I can sort of be an audience at the same time as I am a performer, and this is also a way to to engulf myself in this world that
Mm-hmm.
I'm suddenly creating. And sometimes I have very strong floodlights from the stage onto the audience with red light filters or something. So they're so strong that you really have to close your eyes. And this is so it's not nothing to look at. It's just you close your eyes and you get immersed in this world.
Do you feel that
So
you can get a bit wobbly when you're doing performance because you are experiencing the same sort of,
yeah,
yeah.
yes, yeah. Especially when I use low frequency because they are really kind of bodily.
Mm-hmm.
All frequencies, all frequencies like pure sine wave frequencies and so on, match various uh, sequences of your body, right? So the low frequencies are very kind of on your low body and stomach and so on. And then you go up over your heart, and then the really high frequencies is really up high there on your brain and so on. And I can play around with that. And of course, I get kind of wobbly myself, and
Mm-hmm.
and but I realize that and I can control this a little bit with. I also have had quite a let's say I've been careful with frequencies, because they are quite powerful, and frequency combinations are quite powerful. And I'm not in there to destroy something,
Mhm.
or to. I mean, I've been very interested in hard volume and kind of, let's say, destruction in a very constructive way, because certain types of destructiveness can be very, very productive and very upbuilding, so to speak. But I'm quite aware of the fact that if you put certain frequencies together, it can create very disturbing, anxiety and all these kind of things, and I don't really want that. But I want to be aware of these kind of things. So it's quite important for me to realize that it works like this, and that what I want to work with.
Frequencies are present around us, and it's like being in different cities. So I live in New York City. It's not the best environment for, well, it invokes anxiety definitely at times. And then I think if you're in the mountains, it's a different feeling. So the environment and how that is vibrating does impact the body, whether
Yeah,
we're aware of it or not. It does
yeah. No, the
contribute.
Earth,
Yeah.
the Earth, the Earth's rotation creates a frequency, or yeah, a very low frequency. But also the like, I mean, Pythagoras was right, or the music of the spheres and so on, that he sensed from a maybe miraculous point of view. I mean, I don't really know how he, but so sensing the kind of planets rotating around our planet, and to sense these frequencies that all the planets in our solar system produces, and to be able to perceive this is amazing. I mean, especially from somebody that lived for such a long time ago. We can record these kind of things. We can analyze these kind of things. We can pick up these signals from planets, and from the sun, and from outer space. So these frequencies in the cities, they have something they can block out. Actually, they don't really block out the frequencies from um, from space, but our brain does, because as Huxley said in somewhere in the 50s, our brain is his the primary function for the brain is to protect you by filtering out certain things. So, because if you get all the information at the same time that you get around you, from vision, smells, and audio and so on, you go insane, right? So the brain has to filter out certain kind of things, and then use what the brain thinks you need in a specific place. But if you learn how to filter, if you defilterize, then you can sense a lot of things, even in the city, even if you think it's like a big noise situation with police cars and traffic and whatever, and suddenly you can actually move into those kind of areas too. But of course, it's easier to be out in the nature. But you have always have frequencies. I mean, this kind of idea of silence and so on is quite interesting. I mean, anechoic chambers and so on, they are really fantastic to walk into, and suddenly there's no sound, and suddenly you start to hear your nervous system,
Mm-hmm.
very high pitched frequencies, and of course your heart beating and so on, and you suddenly you hear your body in this anechoic chamber. So this is also this kind of non-silence, really.
Well, it's
And
like how the body has been formed. If we heard our stomach every day, or if we were physically aware of all the internal organs, that would just be too much for one day. We wouldn't be able to perceive our
no, we would.
external
No,
world.
yeah, we'll be worn out
Yeah.
from this. So the brain just filters this out, and picks it up when you need it. Like, oh, did my heart stop? Maybe you should check it
Yeah.
out. Oh no, it's kind
Check
of
my
beeping
pulse.
there. I mean, it's these things like this. But so from a frequency point of view, uh, there is a multitude of low, mid, and high frequencies that are, and of course now with all the radio frequencies, including the telephone networks and
Internet,
TV
Wi-Fi,
networks,
and
internet, Wi-Fi, everything. It's like an amazing amount of that actually affects us all the time. Like this frequency now from the cat
yeah.
here, you can see here.
What's your cat's name?
There's two of them. There's like Hansu and Genji.
Japanese?
Yeah, but they're not Japanese. They're Swedish house cats. But yeah,
They can say
and
hello.
we want something now, but it's kind of okay. Anyway, so yeah, so you have this enormous, from a micro and macro point of view, this enormous field of frequencies that are still very much unexplored, because sound is still very unexplored, even from artists and so on. There's so much wonderful things to do still for artists in terms of sound. Well, in vision too, but we've been living in some kind of a visual world for a while, and a lot of people forgot about sound. But
And learning
there's
how to listen to sound, I think, paying attention to what is
and
actually happening around you and
yeah,
that information. And
it's
I think it all comes down to information that gives you an understanding of the world that you're in. And that's why
yeah,
we have these senses, is really from a very primal.
yeah. I mean, we were basically our first when we were in our mother's wombs. The sound was the thing that, for us at the time, as fetuses, the sound that came from outside, and also from within the mother's body and so on, and through water, which is a very good sound conductor. So, but still, so if we move into these things like EVP and all this kind of frequency investigations, this is very interesting when you talk about it from a frequential point of view.
Could you talk a little bit about what EVP is?
Yeah, so it's something that's been an idea since the birth of electricity, and from the industrial era, really. I mean, the ideas of being able to record something from the other side, from dead people, from souls or whatever, has this idea of this has been around since, I mean, Edison and Tesla and all these science people were but they never really did any serious experiments with it. But so the idea is basically to investigate something that science and art, whatever, always was trying to figure out what it was. Of course, death, and nobody really knows what it is still, of course, because we're all alive, and then and what do we know, and how do we tackle this, and in 1959 there was uh, a man. His name was Friedrich Jürgenson. He uh, he came up with. He was the first person who was presented recordings from the other side, and he in 1959. So it's quite an important year in that sense, and he was just out with a tape recorder trying to record birds outside here in Stockholm. But when he was listening to this tape, he heard some kind of voices and so on, and he thought it was some spaceships, or I mean, it was the time of the first people in Earth too, and they were the Russians and the Americans were started to compete about like orbiting the Earth with space shuttles or whatever. So he thought it was something like that, some kind of spaceship or whatever. But then he realized that he heard his dead mother on this tape. So then he started to think about what is death, and what is happening when you die, and what's happening with the soul, and so on and so on. So this is basically what it is. And the development of this during the years has been also that when we are doing it now, when we do these recordings now, we talk a lot about energy. And we talk a lot about, we don't use so much these old religious kind of words like soul or we try to avoid the whole religious thing about it, because it becomes romantic in some kind of way. So at the same time, for myself, I love to work with an American guy, his name is Michael Esposito.
And that's who you've released this record with,
Yes,
Energy
yes.
Unveiled and Reformed.
And he's also an artist. He has his artist soul and so on, but he works with EVP. He's a EVP, electronic voice phenomena researcher, and I am the more of the composer and artist. And it's nice to work with him because he's very scientific about it, and I'm very artistic about it. So we always say, let's take this and compose something with it, do something with it. Let's make a piece out of it. Because I still think, for my sake, that I would like to use these recordings as instruments. You can even make choirs out of it, or whatever. I mean, you can compose whatever you want, depending on also what kind of information you get from the recording, because you can get so many different recordings. We use only tape recorders, or we can do iPhones, or we can do we prefer kind of low tech digital, like this kind of microphones that were like dictaphones, very kind of cheap things that you buy in, what call
Early
it,
day recording
Dinko,
devices.
what, what it's called in America, dinkies or dinkos, or this chain you can go to and buy all this electronics and cables and whatever. Yeah, you go there, you can buy some cheap recorder like that you do dictaphone, and you record this, because they don't have these so much of these filters that filters away noise, and the noise is very important to get the noise, not to equalize away the noise so it becomes nothing. You want to have all the noise in the
It's like a
room.
substrate for them to
Yeah, so the noise,
materialize into.
more like, yeah. And when you walk around in this noise, they pick up all these pebbles that might, and doors that tweak, and all these kind of things that you want to listen to. So it's actually very simple. And I mean, the only thing that we do that might have a little bit of a romantic way to look upon it is that we, every time then when we start a recording, we actually address out in the room, and we sort of welcome somebody or something that might be in the room to come up and to uh, to to say something.
I was curious about this because do you feel that the recordings that you're picking up are communicating to you, or they're just ambient presence of spirits, entities that you're
I think
hearing?
my feeling is that they actually talk to me,
Mm-hmm.
because I am there,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe me and Michael is there, or maybe somebody else. And you always have this kind of tricky way of, okay, so do they speak every language in the world? And yes, it's
Amazing.
not it's not our world. We're not talking about this world that you and me are sitting in now. It's something else. It's another dimension at the same time. And knowledge, I don't know what knowledge is in that sense. So if you address things in English, for instance, you will get replies or you will get something in English. But if you do it in Chinese, if you do it in Japanese or whatever, you will get something in those languages, or Swedish, for instance. And at the same time, so one important thing is that when you have the recording from this space, and when you take it home and you listen to it, most of the time we upload it to our computers and listen to it in headphones. The listening part is extremely important. If you can't listen to things, you will not notice anything. But if you have a listening ability and you have developed these kind of senses of being able to listen, you listen to certain anomalies and certain odd things in the recording, or you can actually sense something that sounds like a voice, and you isolate this and you filter away all these other noises, and you can enhance that sound and see what it is. But there's also things that you can reverse sounds, you can stretch sounds, you can pitch sounds in various tones, tonalities, and so on, in order to investigate certain sounds that you hear. And sometimes when you listen to the recording, it's quite clear this is actually a voice. But sometimes you hear just some kind of strange, like, for instance, I can tell you a story. You want to hear?
Yeah, I'd love to hear a story.
Yeah, so one odd story that I was experiencing when I did it myself without Esposito was once 10 years ago I moved to Mallorca in the Mediterranean Sea from Sweden. So we lived there for 1 year. And when I moved there, I said to myself, well, I have to do something there, I mean, you can't just sit there and like some kind of, and look at the ocean. I mean, so what am I going to do with Mallorca? So then I realized, but I have a collection of poems by a Mallorcan mystic who wrote poetry in his youth. His name was Ramon Llull. His family name is like Llull, but it's pronounced Llull. So Ramon Llull's poetry I brought, and then I realized, well, he was living here in Mallorca, and he was a mystic, and I got books from like here and there about his like life, and I traveled around on Mallorca. I found monasteries that he founded, and then I learned that he learned logic from an Arabic person, and he developed this logic into something that inspired later, some 100 years ago later, inspired Leibniz to come up with the binaural ones and zeros of computer programming. So this kind of guy is like strange. But he was also, when he was 40, had this illumination or whatever, some kind of god or whatever. So he went into a cave in Mallorca and lived there as an hermit for 1 year. And I said, well, let's see if we can find this cave, So we found the cave. And I made an EVP recording in this cave, of course, that's what you do.
Do you do this by yourself, or is someone else with you?
Yeah, I was there a couple of times. So there was some other people with me.
Mm-hmm.
But of course they kept quiet and so. But so I made a recording in this cave, and I took it back and I listened to it, and it was super boring because you had the wind in the microphone going, so this, and it was like nothing was going on there. I didn't hear anything, and I was like, maybe I should send this to Esposito. Maybe he can hear something because I can't hear anything. There was only one thing, and there was a little fly that, when they come close to the microphone, they go like zoom, this kind of,
Mm-hmm.
and then they fly away, take away again. And so this was the only strange, odd thing on the recording, and so I took the sound of this fly and I kind of isolated it and stretched it a little bit and pitched it down a little bit. And then there was this male voice saying, blasphemy. So I thought, oh, this is crazy. Which also, and it reminds me of this monster fly that William Blake painted, like in the early 19th century. But um, this also says with this story, I'm also saying that the human imagination means a lot in this kind of work too. It's only like, it's not, you cannot approach this only from a kind of a scientific point of view, really, because you really have to have an imagination. And you cannot, if somebody asks me, do you believe in these voices and these kind of things, and I usually say it's much more fun to say yes than to say no. No is boring. So yes, but yeah, but I don't really have to, because I also realize that my imagination and the human imagination and the human way to look at images, like the human way to look at Rorschach images, or certain types of well, even looking at clouds in the sky, and you can see, oh, there's a something there, and then people can see various shapes that looks like a teapot, or it looks like a whatever, or so the imagination is like from the, I remember from the 9/11 at the World Trade Center, when there was this cloud and some people could see some faces in the cloud, in this cloud from coming from the and they were talking about devil or whatever, but it's just human imagination, and this plays quite a large has a large role in these kind of recordings too. When you listen to it, you either you pick up something that might be a energy that comes from a certain person, or that maybe has been hurt in a certain place. So the energy, the life energy of this person has sustained in this place and is still there dwelling. Or you can have energy clusters from concentration camps in like Germany, where people have enormous amounts of people have suffered, and this energy is so strong, but also like energy of joy and happiness can also be so strong that it's kind of still there. So that's one point of it. It's an analog to that is when, for instance, if there's a room in a house, and two people have been there, a couple maybe, and they've been there like 2 hours earlier, and they've been quarreling, you know, fighting and shouting and calling each other names or whatever, and then they walked out from the room, and you come in, and you feel this in the room. Of course, you feel it a little bit maybe in the sweat particles or in the, I don't know, but you feel this brutal energy that something has been going on here in this room 2 hours ago.
Sure.
And we talk about these energies in this kind of way, that the energies have been staying there really because of something happened and so on. So you can take this, say, or you can take the fantasy fly from my recording of Ramon Yuyi and so on, and you say, well, it's just something that happened to be there, and it kind of sounds like that because I did this stretching a little, and it's my fantasy that it sounds like a human voice. So, and for me personally, I love both because I can just enjoy working with
And the
it and see
curiosity
what it.
of what you can discover.
Yeah, yeah, or how voices work and how it functions overall or what sound is, what it contains, how there is some people who say that certain sounds just stays with certain objects for hundreds of years and so on, and there's some research about that.
Could you briefly
But
talk about memory and energy, that energy can hold memory? And Maybe it's like a carbon
Yeah,
atom that's recycled and moved around.
yeah. It's also. I mean, it's also in material. In if you talk, I mean, about materia contra energy, and they always have a relation. If you do things, this creates a frequency. When I do this, when I take my fingers and I rub them towards each other, but so material and energy and is energy and this kind of life becomes a form in some kind of way, right? um, I don't know if form comes before energy or energy comes before form. This is like maybe the chicken and the egg or whatever. I have no idea what the relation of that, and maybe it also oscillates like this, that you don't know, but still. So when energy contained in something, I sometimes call it mattergy, because it's like matter, but it's also, one should know that this is also energy, because material is like atoms and like particles that stick together and becoming a table or a chair or a microphone that you're talking in, or various types of atoms. If you dissolve these atoms dissolves, and it disappears from you. And it's really hard to believe this, because solid state
How could it
matter
be
is so solid that how could it be energy? But it is. Everything is energy. So if you use something called emission spectroscopy, then you can analyze the frequency emissions and energy that comes from every ground element that you have from the periodic table, and also the combination of the ground elements that form whatever, plastic or whatever. I mean, any kind of material, you can detect energy, and then you can analyze this, and you can get a graph, a frequency graph out of it, and then you can transfer it into an audible sound. And I've done this several times and made compositions from
Yeah, you've
this.
done the cemetery in Uruguay.
Yeah,
Was it also
yeah,
in 800,000 Seconds to
yeah.
Hurrah? Did you do? No, that was
No,
just a
that
field
no,
recordings.
that was field recordings, and the drone in that one is a Ethiopian krar string instrument. And this piece was a little bit odd from my other works, because this was I was asked to do theater music for an Arthur Rimbaud play, or not a play by Rimbaud, the poet, but about his life in Africa. So I went to Ethiopia and I did all these recordings, and this was used in this play. So it's a little bit different. I didn't do any EVP recordings in Ethiopia. Maybe I might go back and get Arthur Rimbaud's. But he died in Marseille anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So that was different.
So back to the emission spectroscopy.
Yeah, I used the soil from a certain cemetery in Montevideo in Uruguay. Yeah.
And how do you transfer, or what sort of system do you use to transfer those readings into a sound notation? Do you replicate it into frequency? What
I,
kind of thinking do you use?
yeah, I just listen to the sound that these emissions produce, and this is
On a frequency.
if you transfer the unaudible frequency that you get from the emissions, and you pitch it, you get an audible, for humans, an audible sound. So you have to do this first, and this has to be from a science lab. We did it in a university here in Sweden. Took some other sounds another time from a gold mine in Colombia, up north of Medellin. And this was because I used it in a film that I did with a friend of mine about gold mining in Colombia.
That was Thomas
And
Nordenstad.
so,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And the film is called Golden Days, Remedios, in 2012 or something. And yeah, the reason to go there was because I wanted to show gold. It's like the alchemical kind of style of, something that dirt that feels inside the earth, and suddenly you have a gold bar. At the same time, in Colombia, it's very destroyed by international mining companies, Canadian and Australian companies that destroy actually the nature with this gold mining thing. So it's quite a serious thing. So I just wanted to put a point on that when we did this film.
And also, I think destroying the energy of the earth, it must disrupt whatever
Yes,
energy system they have happening there. And then, just like you're
of
talking
course.
about
I
the
mean,
distressed spirit, the
yeah,
nature also is giving off
yeah, yeah.
how it's
I
feeling.
know. Like, just like with this oil industry and so on, just like this kind of
Mm,
emptying of the Earth's kind of oil system or whatever. I mean, it's nature is it's itself.
disrupted.
Yeah, and nature talks to itself, and it kind of balances up itself, because that's why we have such a
Hmm.
beautiful nature as we are, and the Earth is so wonderful, and yeah, so it's all about that. So yeah, I've used this emission spectroscopy a couple of times, a couple of more times actually, about this Mattergy things, talking about what what sounds, what energy objects and material carry. But I like
Hmm.
the when I see the linkage between energy and material, because I don't believe in dead material. I'm a little bit of a, like we certain tribes, when they believe in certain objects and so on, they're not really they don't believe in one god or whatever. Just like they just know that certain things have life, and I very much can find myself a little bit like
Well, it's even like possessions of our ancestors that we hold on to.
yeah, relics.
You know, we become attached, yeah, to relics and
Yeah, and
objects that have
it
meaning.
has life. I mean, it has meaning. It has energy. And also like fetishism and so on. I mean,
Hmm.
various fetishism. You go somewhere, you bring a little stone with you as a memory from this place, but it's also you bring a little bit of this energy to your home, and you put it on the bookshelf, and you have it there, and it's like it's sort of, yeah. I think it's I think it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's
Mm.
beautiful if we think about the energy of it, but we also project our ideas of what it means
Yeah. So
and can hold
you
on to
actually
it.
have a dialogue with the object,
Mm,
uh,
mm.
from an energy point of view, or just your perception point of view. So this is what it's all about with my doing all this, the music, and trying to because I listen to things, and I like music, and I like art, uh, and I like
I also think though you're listening to the world and you listen to culture and history.
yeah,
I don't think this is just about sound and audible experience. I think it's about relating it and translating it like a device in a way. You're a device that's
yeah,
capturing experiences of a place or a moment and giving it to us in a digestible
yeah,
format.
and get the feel for it. I mean, and
Mm,
maybe I'm old enough to understand that I won't understand everything, but understand a little, and then get a feel to it, and get connected in some kind of way. I think also a little bit like us humans, we are a little bit disconnected with the nature and the world. We're kind of, sometimes I get really irritated when some people say, "Well, we are not animals. We are like, what, so what are you then? You're some kind of god or something. What are you? I mean, you're like, you know, mammals.
Yeah, we're flesh
Yeah,
and
from
bone. And
emotion we kind of we produce babies like whales or like chimpanzees or whatever. I mean, it's just like, you give birth, you're like an animal. And then I feel strange with this disconnection that not everybody has, but a lot of people, especially a lot of people in power situations, lost this kind of connection to the world and to why they're around, and I'm not stupid enough to think that I will like understand everything, because I don't, and I won't. But still, I would like to feel this kind of connection. I don't want to feel uh,
separate.
separated, and I don't want to allow myself to get tricked into some kind of situation. Uh, it's very easy to get tricked into stupid situations when you're in the art world or music world,
Sure.
because the art world especially deals with a lot of money. You sell an artwork for $1 million or whatever, it's like stupid, I mean, all this money that rotates around art, when art is really more about this kind of connectiveness, together with other people and together with the world and so on.
Well, I think you've held that space. I really admire how you've maintained your position and interest and curiosity without, while you have participated in the art world
Yeah,
and
yeah,
had events, there it seems to be this integrity that you just hold your space
yeah, I think so.
and you're continuing your own investigations. And I think that's very important because the art world is so influential. It's just like society and
Yeah,
culture is influential that it's hard to not be pulled, and holding and finding that space where you can really integrate yourself and
I think that.
maintain the
Yeah,
interest is I appreciate that.
yeah, yeah. I think it's important just to be able to try to be honest with what I'm doing. It's like, just to be honest about things, and not trying to be tricked away with some things.
I just wanted to briefly ask before we finish about collaboration, because I feel that's important for you. You've done a lot of collaborations with other people, whether it be in film or performance. And can you just briefly mention your feeling to collaboration and how it contributes to what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, a long time ago when I moved to Göteborg, to Gothenburg on the Swedish west coast, and started to do art and music, more, instead of only just consuming it. And I mean, basically, when I left all the self studies of things, also realized that if I want to do something, I mean, I moved to a place in Sweden, a town where it was really cheap to live. And it was kind of, houses were coming down, and it was like, toilet on the yard, and it was cold water and whatever. So a lot of artists lives there, artists, poets, musicians, also people maybe from the backside of, like, some criminals and prostitutes, and I mean, it's all this mishmash of all kinds of things. And sometimes artists, we kind of uh, we have sometimes we feel that we have more in common with criminals than we have with like normal people or something like this. It's some kind of creativity that the criminal has that the artist also have. Like, how can I make like this bank rob like function? How can I make this composition work? But so then we started just to, well, let's start a gallery then, because I mean, we don't want to go walk around to some gallery with, with your hat in the asking for, some kind of, you know so we let's do it ourselves. So this time, late 70s, early 80s, was a do it yourself time. A lot of people started their own labels. There were the punk movement. There were all these kind of grassroots artists that starting their own kind of projects. And when you live in a community of artists, it's important that you work together. You can still be this egocentric idiot artist, but you have to respect each other's, and you have to acknowledge each other's existence, and then see what you can do. If I do something for you, you can do something for me. All this kind of we give and take and so on. So we started record labels. We started to do festivals. We started to do these kind of things ourselves. And this is the way I started to curate things, because with galleries and having a label and so on, you work with other artists. And then I realized more and more that I get so tired of myself only working with my own solo projects. It's like I get fed up with myself. I mean, it's like, God, take me away from myself. But when you work with other people, they bring in that kind of unknown things that you don't understand. And they plant these things in your work, and then suddenly this collaboration becomes something. And I find that more interesting for myself. So sometimes I do solo work, and sometimes I curate, and sometimes I have this collaborative thing, because it just gives me more to work with other people and so on, and it's much more interesting. And people are so interesting. A lot of artists that I've been working with from Europe and America and Asia and whatever, and they are so great people and great artists, and it's wonderful to do something. Like 2 years ago, I was in LA and I did this big freak wave thing at Mount Wilson Observatory, and it was, great. West Coast American artists came around, and it was lovely to see these guys and girls, and like just do something together. It's just fabulous, And then, yeah, so.
I agree that whether it's from other people's cultures or just their experiences, that bringing people together from different places, it also gives you experience of how other people think and participate in the world.
Yeah. And it also gave me and gives me still the idea that we don't really live in a hierarchical world. Hierarchies are only for people to gain power, and one king, and then you have all these workers on the bottom, and then you kind of exploit all these people. Instead, you realize that when you meet people, when I meet people and work with people, some of them might be super famous, and when I was a kid, I mean, I was a Beatles fan, and then you grow up in this kind of fandom, and you don't even think that these people exists, apart from in magazines or records, and suddenly there's some concert, or and they like, it's a world, a vast world between the audience and the performer, because of this stardom. But then when I started to meet people like William Burroughs and Brian Geis and these Beats, or these people that I really admired, and just realized that, but these are amazingly enough just people, just like normal human
navigating their own
navigating their own path,
yeah.
and there is people doing what they're not. I mean, they're special because everyone is special. And they're special in their kind of way, and their way is so interesting that I think they're really interesting. But they're just people anyway. They go to the toilet, and they buy toilet paper and whatever they do, all these people. So suddenly, and so it also taught me that I'm not looking for this kind of stardom, or I'm not looking for to be famous. I don't look for these kind of things. I can see on my friends that are kind of famous that they are like it, but they are a little bit. There is an awkward thing about it that I would not want to have.
So much, Mickey. I've really appreciated our conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to We Are Art People. You can listen to full episodes on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We are online at www.weareartpeople.com. Sign up to our newsletter for show updates and happenings, and please share with someone who may enjoy listening. See you next time.